Hello guys, it's Randall with BitRaged. This is the weekly Forex Market Breakdown. I was planning on doing this video earlier, but someone sideswiped me, so I was in an accident and I had to deal with all that. It is what it is, and the good news is nobody was hurt in the process, even though it could have been avoided if someone had been paying attention. But cars can be replaced and people can't, so I'm just thankful that everyone is okay. So that's why I didn't get this out to you earlier, but here we are, and let's get started. So this is the DXY, and this is what I was looking at last week. You'll notice that we have that break of this, what I was seeing as a wedge pattern, ascending wedge pattern, and you'll see that as a break. Now, something you have to keep in mind, there is nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's not valid, because it totally could be. You could also look at that pattern as being the correct pattern. I actually prefer that pattern, and it doesn't really matter too much. You can extend it to here, but either way, this is a larger pattern, and it has 1, 2, 3 touches. So if the daily ends as a bullish engulfing, this would give good indication that we might be moving back up to possibly tag that dollar mark, which I have done in previous videos as being a possibility. Now, if you remember from last week, I had the ray lines in here, and I was telling you guys that we don't want to trade in this movement, okay? We want to stay out of that kind of movement, and I wasn't going to trade unless we got a break up or break below that area. We did end up getting that break above, and you might be saying, okay, there was your flag to move higher. Why wouldn't you have taken that? I didn't take that because of a couple of reasons. This is a double top area. Overall arcing nature as well, very corrective on the decline. But we also got that push up and immediately got rejected at a double top area. I'm not taking a flag with that as the nature of the start. It just doesn't work out 9 times out of 10. You might catch one, but it isn't worth it in the long term. That we then form this more of like a broadening wedge type style. So we get that impulse, correction impulse, complete the pattern, and then impulse, correction, and we break down. We didn't actually complete that as a flag. Had we, that could have been an entry as well. So we did break down below. We did tag this area, which if we look, so that's an ascending within a ascending pattern. Now, because we do appear to be moving off, we are moving off a little bit of correctively, so we have to see how this does end up progressing. We could just arc like this and then move up, or we could reject as well. This does overall still feel more like a flag, even though it's a sloppy flag. That has not been invalidated yet. So I'm not interested in taking any trades right now based on this. Let's take a look at the euro dollar. So I mentioned on the DXY we could be getting that move down, or the move back up again to tag the 100 level, the dollar. So the dollar would actually technically be worth $1. If you look at this where we are at the bottom, you look back, that's a potential area, 1.08308, around that area. If we did, the euro dollar does move down and it breaks, that would be the area I'd be looking at as a possibility, and we can actually put that on the chart. I don't know if I have that on yet, but let's see. So you put that down if it does break down lower. Looking at where we are right now, overall this has the arcing feel and a rejection to it. This is overall fairly impulsive, correction impulse. It does seem like we are moving to the upside, even though we do have a little bit of rejection here. The areas I would look for rejection to move back down would be this ray line, that ray line, or that ray line. And obviously as you continue up you can see. But like I said, because of how corrective this is, and then we get this nice rejection here, this just feels like it wants to continue up. It is somewhat wicky, so we have to keep that in mind. And as we drop it down to the hourly here, we have some interesting channels here. So we had this descending that moved into an ascending. That broke down and it moved into another ascending channel. So you don't want to just trade these anywhere. So that right there wasn't overall that great. There would be nothing in there. I wouldn't take that as a double top. I would not. It's just in the middle of nowhere. It comes from a sideways correction. That's not an entry I would take. If you're going to take entries, you want them to be more high probability. So if we moved correctively up, you could take a double top here. There's always the potential that it's going to move up higher and tag this, or possibly tag that. And it could even go up and tag that before it drops. And I'm not saying it has to drop, I'm just saying that's a possibility. So those are areas to keep an eye on. If you're going to take a ascending tight correction here, I wouldn't take it unless it tags the double top or it tags this area. Anything below that is somewhat risky, and it would indicate you would have to have a larger stop. So that would be 30 pips minimum, that'd be 40 pips, you're talking 80 pips. An 80 pip stop is ridiculous. You should never do that. If you're going to take a trade like that, you need to step back and understand what are you doing. You're not doing something right. So usually on euro dollar, you can take between a 15 and 25 pip stop. Sometimes you need 30, but usually 20 to 25 is good for euro dollar. So Aussie CAD on the hourly, we are looking at this as impulse correction, which turned it into a broadening wedge style formation. We do have that nice rejection. The one thing you can look at this is as a possible head and shoulders. So if that forms like that, any kind of continuation or shoulder style here would be something to look to move to the upside. We'll see what happens when we tag or come to this area. If we break it, which would seem to be the likely scenario, but it is also possible we break down and double bottom to move off. So two areas to keep in mind. Overall, this appears to be moving more likely to the upside than the downside, at least short term. Yeah, on the daily, we have the pattern within a pattern, and we do have those three touches, and it's a nice, really nice rejection style. So shoulder, head, shoulder, nice rejection on the bottom. We also have that high test wick. So a little bit of indecision on the daily. So that is something to keep in mind. But overall, that translates into the hourly as a broadening wedge. So if we get continuation or that other half of the shoulder, I would take that, or look to take it anyways. Aussie dollar is a little interesting. It's ascending channel. I really like this. It's a beautiful completion of a pattern. Beautiful completion. The problem is when we get that reject and move down, we kind of double bottom here, but it's in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so I wouldn't take a double bottom in the middle of nowhere here. And I think this is where you need to be careful, because that is meaningless. That as a double bottom is meaningless. You can find those here. That's a double bottom. Look how it rejected there. But if you'd taken that, you'd get stopped out. That's dumb area. That's not a good area. So if you're going to take double bottoms, they need to be in key areas. This double bottom here, that's a key area. That makes sense. It's a pattern. And if you look at the larger structure, taking that, well, actually it aligns really well. So anywhere in that area, a double bottom, that makes sense. Doing those makes sense, but in the middle of nowhere, absolutely not. So here's the interesting thing. Regardless of what happens here, which appears to be a continuation flag pattern forming, this is overall ascending in nature. Now, it can break out, and we could continue. That does happen sometimes. It's just not the most likely. Most likely scenario is whatever happens, this eventually is going to break down. That's most likely. When it does break down, if it does, which we expect is likely, look to a double bottom here or another touch on the trend line, or a break just below and a reject to look for entries. Now on the hourly, if this continues like this as a tight flag, that's something I would consider looking into taking. It really depends on how it forms. It's not the best entry, simply because it's an impulse. It's a V pattern, and I don't really care for those, except if this was here, that'd be totally different. So you have to be a little more careful with that, because you just have to be careful. That could be that pattern as well. But I do see this right now as forming more of a flag style, a tight flag, and you could look into taking that. On CAD Yen, we technically have broken out of the descending channel. The one thing to keep in mind is we do have those high test wicks, and we do have currently a rejection. It could turn into a correction or a flag style right on the trend line, and if it does, then on the daily, we are looking for that move to continue to the upside if we form that flag. But we don't have that clarity yet, so we're not exactly sure. Also keep in mind that overall, this is a flag continuation, so the indications would indicate more upside is likely, at least for the long term. We have somewhat of a sloppy flag. This is CAD yen, but it is a very sloppy flag. I wouldn't be taking this because it's just a really, if you were going to take this entry, it would be that one right there because of 1, 2, 3 touches, 3 clear touches. But I wouldn't be taking this right now. If it arcs like that, then we'd definitely be hoping to see that move to the upside. It does overall seem to still want to move there. If this continues to do this type of movement, I'd be seeing it as more likely downside. But it's not really clear right now. Overall, I do think it's going to continue, but I would not be taking that entry right now. Okay, so for Euro Aussie, we're basically moving more sideways. It's got a slight descent to it. It does come from an impulse. It comes with a flag, a hover, so it's a bigger pattern flag. We do get that nice rejection style double bottom, but we also are seeing a rejection from the top. So we have to kind of see how this plays out. Would I take an entry if this moves out as a flag? Probably not. I have to wait and see, but probably not just because of where it's at. I would prefer to move back down, break, and then get a rejection to take to the upside. But you have to get more clarity on this, but the overall, it does feel like it wants to continue up. If you look at this from the daily, overall very corrective. So we come from an impulse, correction. The daily is looking like it wants to sell. And the hourly is looking like it wants to move up. We are moving down from this ascending channel. So if we keep that in mind, what could happen is we could have the triple top already and we could be moving down. Or what is also possible is we could do something like that and it would just be forming larger pattern to move lower. So that's possible. I'd keep that in mind if I was to take any trades on this. Because it is sideways in nature, it does indicate more of indecision than if it was a truly descending pattern. So keep that in mind. So the Euro British Pound, as we had talked about a long while ago, we did get that double top and reject from the past here. So to see this move to the downside was expected. We got a couple of trades on it and I missed a couple of them, but that's okay. We do overall impulse, correction, impulse, and it's a larger correction in my drawing sloppy, but you get the picture. We did double top here before dropping. One thing with Euro British Pound is it does that style a lot. So if you see these larger flags like this, they often will double top or move to a previous correction just below it and then drop. Euro Pound does this all the time. So if you backtest that, you might find a little bit of a niche to get in. I used to not like Euro British Pound. I used to not trade it. And then as I got to know the nature of it, when you can catch some moves on Euro Pound, they can be really, really awesome. So if you're not trading it, backtest it and really learn the nature of it because it's not a bad pair once you really understand it. So overall, this arcing, somewhat arcing nature, but definitely low momentum corrective with a double top break. I did really like that style. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'd like to tell you I took this trade, but I was looking at this as a trade, and I had my stop at, it was just under, actually I had this on the chart, I just deleted it, but it was just under 40 pips. And the reason why is because I was looking at this ray line as a possibility to break that and then move to the downside. So there's a couple reasons why I didn't actually take this trade. One of them is that I don't take trades anymore, generally speaking, on Euro pairs with a stop of 40 pips. It's usually 20, 25, and sometimes I can get in 15, but it's usually 20, 25. I don't do 40 anymore. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If this is in your style, that's fine. It just, I took it out of mine. I don't do 40 pips anymore. Because I figured that if my risk, if I have to have that big, then it must mean I have a pretty good reason to believe it could move up higher, which it did. And I was seeing this and I didn't want to take that doji. So I was waiting to see if this rejected, and I was going to take a rejection. And I don't really even know why I didn't take that rejection. I guess because it wasn't quite at the ray line. So I was looking for a rejection, and we got this, and I wasn't going to take it at the bottom of the pattern. So I just let it go. And that's okay. You know, it was a really beautiful trade, probably between 6 and 12%, depending on your stop. But, you know, I didn't lose the trade. It didn't meet my criteria, so I was happy to not take it. Then when it dropped, I was looking at this, and I said, you know, that looks like a nice pattern. So I was looking for that second touch to take it. We didn't you know, it dropped out before we got the second touch. It's a wick made it, and I don't take those styles. So I let that one go, and then this just developed out into a larger pattern. So I haven't actually got anything on this position yet, which happens. You know, it's okay. Not a big deal. So where is Euro British Pound headed right now? If you look at the daily, it's really looking like it wants to continue down. We have to see how far, but really it has a lot of room to move here. We do see somewhat of an impulse on the daily, but the daily isn't closed. It doesn't mean too much. Right now, because of what it's forming, it does appear it wants to form a bigger pattern, whether it's a sideways movement, whether it's a bigger flag like that, or it's just some sloppy, crappy nonsense like that. But it does seem to want to form a bigger pattern. Also, as I just mentioned to you, a move to tag that low happens a lot in Euro British Pound. So that's a possibility as well. Back test it before you start taking entries like that, but you can actually enter Euro British Pound based on that style. Euro Yen is looking similar to Euro British Pound as far as what it's forming right now, which appears to be more of a bigger pattern. We do have those wicks rejections, so it moves up, it tries to move up basically 4 times, and it gets rejected. We do have that low test as well. So basically indecision right here, and we fall out, but we're not falling out extremely impulsive. So a couple things could happen. This could be the impulse. That could be the flag. It is a yen pair after all. The other thing that could happen, it could be, again, forming corrective movement. If it does that, we don't want to get involved with that. So just kind of let this one ride a little bit. If it drops, if it drops out and forms a flag like this, actually like that, we would take a flag like that all day long. And if it does that, let's actually put that back, that would be a head and shoulders pattern. So that's pretty decent as well. You could actually almost say that could be a head and shoulders. It's a little bit of a hunchback style, but that would work. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're looking at the daily, we do technically have a break and a pullback. So we'll have to wait and see if that, again, is this forming correction to a flag to continue higher, which it does appear based on the way it's moving. Or are we moving back into the pattern because it is a double top? Just 2 scenarios to look at, but we do need more development on this. If it's going to reject, it will most likely reject from here because it's double, triple top area. But also, the impulse is to the upside. Euro Kiwi, I kind of actually like because if you look at this, it's forming 2 broadening wedges. So you have the larger one and then the duplicate inside. And if you look at this, they're very, very similar. Because we got the rejection here in the third touch, we don't have to complete this pattern. It can happen. In a good percentage of the time, you will complete both patterns. But it doesn't have to happen. We could actually just reject from here. So because of this, we technically right now are still in a downtrend. This is a rejection and a downtrend. The only way that gets invalidated is if it moves back up above this area. Currently we're downtrend, so we're looking for sells. If this forms out as a flag, I would love to take that. That would be an amazing entry, in my opinion. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at upside unless, again, we get that break above. I'm seeing this as the move to the downside. So that could definitely happen. But these patterns, once the wedges form and they develop and complete, they can make some nice moves. So that's something to keep in mind. It's also important to keep in mind because this is part of the other pattern. We could see a duplicate of that. So what we'd want to do in a case like that is we would just take this and do that. And if you do that, and we could do this. If we do that, then it almost fits the pattern. So we're almost to the bottom there. So we don't know how far this could go. And then it might trickle down a little bit. But it fits. So this forming a flag to continue, I would like that. But also keep in mind, it might form the flag and then just make this pattern. It could do that. If it's going to duplicate, it could just do that. Just have to see how it happens. But if it forms a flag, I will probably take it. It is a nice pattern. On the daily, talk about wedges. We got a lot of them going on here. So larger ascending pattern, we have 1, 2, 3 touches, multiple touches actually on this pattern. It is a double top from the past. We could move up to complete the bigger broadening wedge. Euro Kiwi is full of broadening wedges. So that is a possibility. And we do have that overall somewhat of an ascending nature, kind of sloppy on the daily. But overall, we do have that rejection and it does still feel like a move to the downside, at least temporarily. So we have to see how this plays out. But again, not looking for any buys unless we break above that area. All right, so Euro Norwegian Krone. Someone had asked me to do this pair. This is a pair I don't trade. So I'm just going to give you my opinion based on what I'm seeing. But Norwegian Krone is just one I haven't traded because I need to back test it and it's really, really corrective. So I haven't. If it's part of something you're trading, definitely back test it and see how it moves because it does have its own unique movement. With that being said, if you look on the weekly here, we have these high points. Every time we break a high, we do drop out, and we do drop out for quite a while. So break a high, drop out. We did break a high here. Now we're forming a more corrective movement, and we're really close to this high. Well, we're not too far away from this high. So to see this continue up just a little bit farther and break that high makes sense because in the past we've done that. We've tried to do that, and so that's something to keep in mind on the weekly. On the daily, so on the daily for Euro Norwegian Krone, we do have those 3 touches, and we do have a more of a sloppy arcing nature and very corrective here on the daily. So to see this drop out, it makes sense to me. It makes sense as a possible. It also makes sense to break that previous high. The market wants to do that, but it doesn't have to happen. On the hourly, we are looking at double top area. We are getting rejection at that area, so this could drop out. It totally could happen. If I was to take a trade on this, I would not consider anything except this double top. That would be a little risky in my opinion. If we did get rejection, you'd want to look to key areas like this. Yeah, that'd be the top. So those would be the areas to look at. And the best scenario would be most likely if you move very correctively up and rejected. As far as taking a trade to the upside, I probably wouldn't consider it just because I don't know the pair that well. And I haven't traded it. So, but that's what I would look at as the possibility. We do have that arcing nature here and a double top, so it could drop out from here. I wouldn't consider taking any sells at this point unless we do break this pattern and then form a flag. But just the nature of Euro Norwegian Krone, it can be very corrective in its impulsive stages still. So British pound dollar, kind of acting really sloppy. I was seeing this as more of an ascending, more of a broadening wedge, I would call it. We do get that impulsive movement. It tries to form a flag and it just moves out from it. And then we're just getting this trickle down. Now, when we see this, we've technically broken trend, and now we're just looking at this as possibly doing sideways or building a bigger pattern like we talked about on a couple other pairs. So it could do any of those type. And I know some people are always like, well, you say it could do anything. There's points in the market where the market is indecisive, where there's indecision and it's not giving you clear indication. That's fine. You don't need to know what every candle is going to do. Nobody does. So to be arrogant and say, well, you don't know what it's going to do. I don't need to know what every candle is going to do. But I know the long-term moves, and I know that what's going to happen with patterns. So when this develops into a pattern, then I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. But I don't need to know that the next candle is going to be here. Nobody knows that. It doesn't matter. This almost gives me the feeling that it wants to come back down and tag the top of this area and then possibly move off. That is totally a possibility. It seems like it's a possibility. If we look at this on the daily, though, I think this is important. We'll do this. Okay, so not quite a touch, but it's close enough. Yeah, the daily is definitely giving us an ascending channel right now. If this daily closes as a reject, it definitely could indicate that we're going to move back down a little bit. And it may only mean that we move down here, tag, and then we go. But we definitely want to keep an eye on that daily and see how it closes because it should give us a little bit more clarity. But the movement we are seeing on the hourly is not giving us anything to trade on. So right now, I'm not interested in looking for any trades here. We got rejection on the top. We got rejection at the bottom. And we tried to break higher and we got rejected there. So it's really indecision is what we got right now. If the euro dollar moves, British pound dollar is going to follow it. All right, so for Kiwi CAD, this pair can be very corrective as well. It's somewhat sloppy, but we did get this overall rejection at the top, but then it just formed into an ascending. Now, this actually was something you could have traded. And the reason is we got the 1 to 2 clear touches because you have impulse, the middle pattern, the 1, 2, 3. It's a completion of the pattern. So it completed the pattern, and then we got that arcing nature double top and rejection. The only reason why you probably wouldn't have gotten this is because the reject broke all the way to the bottom. So you would have had to take it on the 15-minute, which is fine. It's just a little bit more risky, and you have to be really careful with that. But had it rejected here, I would have taken it personally. But I'm not going to take it here because we're near the end of the beginning of the correction. So I wanted down that. But that was a nice pattern. You could have taken that if, you'd gotten the rejection right. So again, if we're looking at the daily, what the Kiwi CAD wants to do, it does look like it wants a double bottom, does it not? Right? Move up, sideways movement, right? And then we're getting that rejection. So double bottom or a break and then a move up looks like the possibility, but Kiwi CAD definitely looking for the downside movement. We do have the impulse here, but it could be just forming that, which would be a flag, and could be just forming a bigger pattern of who knows what. So personally, I'm expecting this to move back down to double bottom. The Kiwi CAD, I definitely think that is the most likely. Would I take a sell here? No, it's too sloppy. That type of trade is what I like. I would take that type of trade. So you take Kiwi CAD and then you compare it to Kiwi dollar. What Kiwi dollar is doing right now is just extremely sloppy, and I don't even want to touch it right now. It's just not something you want to get involved in, okay? So I have these ray lines. It gives you an idea. Unless we break out of this area impulsively, one way or the other, I'm not interested in even considering this as a trade. Just not interested. Now, it's possible, and we could be seeing this move to the downside, just like the Kiwi CAD. If you look at it on the daily, overall, this movement is corrective. Impulse, correction. The only reason why you might not see it that way is because we did get the rejection at the bottom. But overall, this is corrective. To see this move back down, or even tag that area move up, those are areas that I would look to, or even double bottom here. But we're actually really close. But not interested in taking anything in this area. It's just not worth it to me. So Kiwi dollar is really not something I'm watching right now. All right, so dollar CAD, a little bit interesting here because, I don't know, just because it's the broadening wedge style. Definitely not a 100% confirmed pattern. It's more of a sloppy, only two tops and technically really, yeah, I think the bottom is definitely more confirmed than the top, but it does give that overall broadening wedge feel. We do get that rejection, but it's corrective. And just like a lot of the CAD pairs right now, you're getting that corrective movement. So we just got to wait and see how this kind of develops out. I'm not going to take any entries on that type of pattern. If we do get that impulse up and then form a flag, I would be taking that. Even if it only comes up to this area and then we get a reject, I would be happy to take that. Well, you know, depending on how it reacts to that area. If we get a corrective movement down, tag this area and move up, or we get a movement down to tag this double bottom, that type of entry, or even a break and then a retrace, that has a pretty high probability. It really does. And if you look at this, where this is right here, if we pull this in, it's quite close. So if you get that break down, doesn't mean the trade's off. It might be just rejecting off from there. So a couple areas to keep in mind. It's still possible we somehow move up here, move back down, and then go. That's also possible. It's a long-term move, and we'll address that as it goes. But dollar CAD, we need a little bit more clarity before I'd be interested in taking this trade. And as you see, a lot of this movement has been really just, you know, stuff you're not going to get involved in. So you want to be careful with dollar CAD because dollar CAD can be really, really impulsive, and it can get a lot of people really psyched up, and it can take you and ring you out. So you have to be careful with the pair, but the pair can be really good on the moves. So if you look, for instance, back here, we got that nice flag, even though I didn't like that rejection candle, but that high test candle, but we got the flag and a really nice move. So that was a really nice ascending channel. So this is the these are some of the pairs I'm looking at, some of the pairs that you guys wanted me to look at, and yeah, that's a lot of the pairs really. So drop in the comments, let me know, do you want me to focus on more like 5 or 6 pairs that I'm looking at personally? Do you want me to do your wildcards pairs you're looking at? What is your preference? Let me know. I'll try to cater towards that as well. Let me know what you're thinking about, what you're looking at for the week ahead as far as pairs you're looking to trade, maybe something I missed. Let me know. If you have questions, drop them below. If you're in Slack, in the BitRage community, just hit me up and let me know if you have questions. Just a quick update on, I've mentioned a couple times, some updates to the BitRage community. They are still in the works, and I'm still actively working on that, the content, you know, how I'm going to release it. So that's still in the process. I'm really working towards that. Also planning and actually working on a video on psychology, planning to drop that very soon. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be powerful. Just a lot of my own thoughts from trading. So if you have ideas for videos, I encourage you, let me know what you want to see. I am going to have another video. I'm going to drop a video on Notion and doing a trading journal with Notion. So just a couple things I'm going to be working on. It's going to be a pretty busy week for me. I'm going to do my best to get as many videos out as I can, and also give you guys as much value as possible. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Have an amazing week, and I wish you all the best.